So we are going to grow in orchids because we want to be able to enjoy the beautiful blooms that they produce. And so is especially growing our dendrobium orchids. One of the main things we want to see is bountiful growth, bountiful blooms, and orchids that just produces and just make us really, really happy. However, there are times when growing our orchids, we really do not get the kind of results that we want and that we hope for. And so today we are going to be looking at some of the reasons why we do not get some of the results that we really want. Our orchids just decide to, instead of bloom, produces keikis. And so we are going to be looking at why they produce keikis, and when they produce keikis, what should we do with them? Welcome back. Today we will be talking about dendrobium orchid keiki, or why orchids in general usually keiki. Keikis are baby plants produced on an aerial portion of the dendrobium cane. If the roots are being produced at the base of the plant, near the region where the canes all come together, then it is a new shoot. If you notice here with this plant, we had this coming up here from the base of the cane. So therefore, this is not a keiki, it is actually a new shoot. Orchid keiki occur naturally when growth hormones accumulate at the node of the flower spike. The production of keiki can also be induced through the use of keiki paste. I have seen where persons have done that. I've never done that. For orchids like our cane dendrobium, keikis are also produced for whatever reason the plant's survival is threatened. So if the plant believes that it's about to die, so this plant actually should be sending out here a new shoot, and whatever happened, perhaps insect would have eaten it out or something. See again right here, it was actually trying to send out another new growth right here. And for whatever reason, whether insect or otherwise, it did not survive. And so because of that, the plant, in a bid to survive, sent out a new plant on the cane. If you notice here, this is in a bid for the plant to survive, hence it sends out the new shoot right there. When there are growth hormone in excess, naturally produced during the development of flower spike or new leaf, these hormones can induce the birth of a keiki. Some orchids have a tendency to produce more keikis than others, and I really noticed that with the dendrobium orchids, that they themselves tend to develop more keiki than other plants. This is so because depending on your growing condition, your growing medium and so forth, that is what determines, if the plant will be sending out more keikis. This plant, whilst it is sending out new shoot, is also sending out keikis as well, because there's something wrong at the base of the plant. So for this not to happen, what I would have to do, I would have to actually repot this, take it out of the medium, see what is happening with the rooting system, and then take it from there. Keikis form when the mature orchid propagates itself by producing new leaves and roots. So a copy of itself in the miniature form. So this is basically a copy of the actual plant here, but a small plant of it. And let me just show you here. This is actually taken from another plant, a baby plant, and I planted it in this. And this is what is happening. It is actually growing and producing beautiful blooms. A keiki can take at least 8 months or even over a year to grow roots. If you look at this right here, this is actually sending out a new plant. However, there is no indication of root on it, and so this will take a while, not necessarily 8 months, but for some plants that will happen. But for the decaying dendrobium, I realized that it doesn't take that long for it to actually root, because if you look at this other one right here, you will see where it is actually rooting. So this one is also not a happy plant. It was sending out a basal growth right here, or a new shoot right here, and whatever happened, it got damaged. And so the plant realized that it is actually going to die, and so it is protecting itself by actually sending out a keiki, or a new plant. So while the plant may take 8 months to a year to grow a root, usually the plant focuses on growing several leaves, which can be as big as a few inches before roots appear. So if you notice right here, it is concentrating on sending out the leaves before it is actually concentrating on sending out the root. It sends out roots only when the parent plant is in its active growth phase. Once a keiki forms on an orchid, it can be left on the mother plant, and it usually grows into another flowering plant. So like here, it is left on the mother plant and it grows into another flowering plant. Or the plant can be removed and propagate into individual plants. So when do we really take this plant off to ensure that it will survive after you take it off the mother plant? So the keiki should develop a healthy rooting system of about 3 inches long before you take it off. At this point, you can separate it and pot it into a separate plant. So this, if you notice, the roots on this one is extremely long, and so all you need to do is to snap it off, and this is a new plant, right? So see here, the rooting system on this is very established, and so this now can be potted into a new plant. And when you do that, it will eventually grow into a completely new orchid like this one that I showed you right here, which I took off a mother plant and planted it in this pot, and this is what is happening with it. It's not the dendrobium orchids alone that will send out keikis or new plants. It's a Phalaenopsis orchid. Of course, it went through some real stress, and so you notice the spike here was cut back, and it is now sending out a baby plant as well. So it has roots here, so I'm gonna wait until the roots on this is perhaps an inch longer before I remove it and plant it as an independent plant. So of course, we all love when our orchids produce beautiful blooms, beautiful leaves. We really do not like when our plants are not blooming, and so once our plants are sending out a lot of keikis, it means that something is wrong with the root or so of the system. We need to check on that. This is another one that I noticed here that is sending out a number of keikis. Well, this right here, I can also remove this because the rooting system on this one is very established, and so I would have gotten another plant of this beautiful orchid right here. So there goes. And so as it is, I have 2 keikis here. So some of us like to get the keikis, because when we get the keikis, we end up with more plants. Whether we can share, or some persons will sell, or just to increase our collection. But whilst that is happening, some persons may not be getting the blooms. Instead of getting blooms, they are getting these little plants, and that is not why we grow orchids. We do not grow orchids particularly to propagate. We grow them because we want to get beautiful and bountiful blooms. And so if this is happening, I would suggest that you check the rooting system of the plant, because something is going on there. the plant is not able to send out the new shoot as it should. And so instead of sending out flowers, it is sending out baby plants instead. There are some orchids though that requires winter rest. And those orchids that require winter rest, like our Dendrobium nobile and so forth, those plants tend to send out a lot of keikis if we do not allow them to rest. So, depending on the growing condition, the growing situation. So for those plants, what I do, October going down to the winter, that is when I tend to stop watering those plants so that they can concentrate mainly on sending out buds instead of sending out new plants. So this is actually another keiki plant that I took off from a mother plant, and I place it in this hanging basket. And if you notice here, it is spiking. These are some others that I would have taken off, and I'm getting bountiful blooms from them. So one thing of note is that keikis usually are formed after the plant would have flowered, not at the base of the plant. So for this one, this is a Phalaenopsis orchid that had suffered crown rot. And if you notice here, it has sent out a new plant. So I would not call this a keiki. This is actually a new plant that is sent out, because this one came from the base of the plant versus this one that actually is produced from the flower spike. So this one is actually a keiki. I also observed that the epidendrum orchids loves to keiki as well, or to send out baby plants. So let me show you this one here. So this is another baby plant that is sent out of this old spike of the plant, and that one has turned into a large enough plant that is actually blooming, even though it is a keiki. So these are some keikis that were recently potted. Nothing is happening as yet, but pretty soon they will look at that. They're sending out new roots down there. So pretty soon it will start sending out new shoots as well, like this one shoot. That was actually a keiki I took off the mother plant. So potting this plant is pretty simple, pretty easy. Get your pot, then you ensure that your planted medium is actually washed as well. And what I do, I set the plant in the pot like that, turn in the section that I expect the new growth to be to the center, and the section that I consider the back closer to the edge of the pot. And I just place my medium in it. And that's basically it. And I put it in an area that is semi-shaded, and I mist it or water it perhaps twice per week. And eventually I get new plants, or eventually it starts growing to the stage where it produces new flower similar to this one. This was what I did with this one, and if you notice, it is sending out lots of roots, and it is now actually flowering. So this is another one that I actually set up. I'm trying this concept where I actually just mount it to the outside of the mesh basket, and it is, with the medium on the inside, and it is doing fairly well. It's taken a while to become established, but nevertheless it's doing its thing. So I hope you learned something from today's video, and I also hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, I ask you to give me a thumbs up. And so you never miss another one of my YouTube videos, why don't you subscribe if you haven't yet done so? And as we say in Jamaica, just follow back on me. This is the Orchid Duck, and I am growing orchids right here in Jamaica. Thank you so much for watching.